provide black slaves for the colonists. With the yearly capture and transport of 1 million black slaves, it is not difficult to figure that from 1661 to 1774, 113 years, approximately 110 million slaves had been removed from their native land. About 10%, or 11 million, black slaves reached the colonies alive. We have talked about the small ship Abigail, which could accommodate only 56 people, and yet the profits per trip were enormous, with little or no investment. There were many other ships, but we will concentrate here on only a few, such as the La Fortuna, Hannah, Sally, or the Venue, which made very great profits. The La Fortuna, by the way, transported approximately 217 slaves on each trip. The owner cleared not less than $41,438 from such a trip. These were dollars which the slave dealers could keep, and these were dollars of value which would buy a great deal in return. When one considers that the Jews of Newport owned about 300 slave-transporting ships, active without interruption, docking at Newport, Africa, Charleston, or Virginia, one can approximate the tremendous earnings which made their way to Jewish ship owners. Indeed, the Jews admit that of the 600 ships leaving Newport Harbor into all the world, at least half of them went their way to Africa, and we know what these ships going to Africa were seeking. The fact that Aaron Lopez had control of over more than half of the combined deals of the colonies of Rhode Island with Newport is well known. The well-known Rabbi Morris A. Gutstein, in his book, The Story of the Jews in Newport, attempts to remove these facts, maintaining that there is not any evidence that the Jews were connected with the slave trade. It is therefore imperative to prove that the Jew was indeed connected with the slave trading, especially so since this rabbi insists they had made great contributions and how very blessed their residence became for the city of Newport. Surely Morris A. Gutstein will grant us permission to present the facts which he was unable to find. Turning to one report of the Chamber of Commerce of the Rhode Island colony in the year 1764, we find, for instance, that in the year 1723, quote, a few merchants in Newport, unquote, devised the idea to send their Newport rum to the coast of Africa. It developed into such a great export that in the matter of a few years, quote, several thousand hogsheads, unquote, of rum went that way. To which purpose did this rum serve? The Carnegie Institute in Washington, D.C. presents and makes public authentic documents entitled, quote, Documents Illustrative of the History of the Slave Trade in America, unquote. We wish to present a few facts from this particular collection of original documents and scrutinize them at closer range, and not at all to prove the heretofore Rabbi Morris A. Gutstein in error. In this collection of the First American Institute of Learning, we evaluate the capital, Rhode Island, which contributed the main share of the public documentation regarding the slave trading. Here we find documented the recipients of the numerous shipping letters, also letters to the slave dealers, and correspondence to the ship's captains, who were about 15% Jews, living in Newport. Among these we find, for instance, the Jew Isaac Eleazar. He wrote a letter to Captain Christopher Chaplin on February 6, 1763, saying he would like to be an agent for a load of slaves. Then follows the Jew Abraham Pereira Mendez and one of the main slave dealers, Jacob Rod Rivera, the father-in-law of Aaron Lopez. And then there is Aaron Lopez himself and many, many other Jews. Although we have considered Aaron Lopez several times, the size of this documented treatise limits us, and we cannot describe all of the writers concerned in the slavery-dealing correspondence, their names and special dates. Rather, we wish to study the documentation of the Carnegie Institute itself, keeping Aaron Lopez in mind. We wish to see what in the main this Jew was pursuing and what his business was. This is due to the fact that Rabbi Morris A. Gutstein presents him as a, quote, lofty and fine civilian of Newport, who was so generous and even, quote, made contributions to the welfare, unquote. In a great number of published, original, unprejudiced writings in the Carnegie Institute, we find that Aaron Lopez pursued a tremendous commerce in rum with the African coast in exchange for slaves. These irrefutable facts are as follows. June 22nd, 1764, a letter by Captain William Steed to Aaron Lopez. July 22nd, 1765, A letter by Aaron Lopez to Captain Nathaniel Briggs. July 22nd, 1765, a letter to Captain Abraham All. February 4th, 1766, a letter to Captain William Steed by Aaron Lopez. March 7th, 1766, a letter by Captain William Steed to Aaron Lopez, and so on and so forth. Aside from that, there are similar statements out of letters by Aaron Lopez in the original, which he directed to Captains Henry Kruger, David Mill, Henry White, Thomas Dolbear, and William Moore. Indeed, one letter by Captain William Moore to Aaron Lopez and Company is particularly revealing, and of special mention at this point. We wish to remark on the main contents of this letter, in which Captain Moore writes, quote, "I wish to advise you that your ship Anne docked here night before last with 112 slaves, consisting of 35 men, 16 large youths, 21 small boys, 29 women, 2 grown girls, 9 small girls, and I assure you this is such a one-rum cargo, or rum in exchange for slaves, which I have not yet encountered. Among the entire group, there may be 5 to which one could take exception." Unquote. The date of the above letter was November 27th, 1773. We have not yet concluded, because of lack of space, the excerpts and grateful compilations made available by the Carnegie Institute. On November 29th, 1767, the Jew Abraham Pereira Mendez, who had been cheated by one of his own kind, from Charleston, where he had journeyed to better control his black cargo, wrote Aaron Lopez at Newport, quote, "These Negroes, which Captain Abraham All delivered to me, were in such poor condition, due to the poor transportation, that I was forced to sell 8 boys and girls for a mere 27 pounds, 2 other for 45 pounds, and 2 women each for 35 pounds. No doubt English money. Abraham Pereira Mendez was very angry and accused Aaron Lopez of cheating him. This letter delineates to us that this generous and fine citizen of New York was insatiable in his greed for money. This is what caused the Rabbi Morris A. Gutstein to present this nobleman, Aaron Lopez, to pursue his objectionable methods. Negroes presented to him but a commodity." In all the letters which the Carnegie Institute published, it stresses the lack of human sympathy for the poor Negro slaves. This lack of feeling and compassion for the abused and pitiful blacks at